hello. This is a Pub in the Life, and we are doing one of my favorite things, which is going for a walk in the countryside. This is my favorite countryside. I'm not gonna tell you where is that, but maybe I will sometime host an event here because I like it here so freaking much. Um, Mom is on her period today, so no gym, and just a tiny walk, relaxing with me on the countryside. But let's get down to business. This is a very stressful week for Mom, and we are not going into the details of what's happening, but just to say, today and tomorrow are going to be two pretty stressful days. Anyway, in today's podcast, what we have here, your first is probably not going to be your last. So, do you remember when you first had your first crush, or even easier, your first boyfriend, girlfriend, your first partner? Well, Mom can perfectly remember it. It was in middle school, was a ginger hair guy named Francesco, and apparently lots of Francescos in her life in the future. And this guy was 2 years older than her. So in middle school in Italy, you have 3 years. Mom was in first year, he was in third year. He was in a class of actually handsome guys. He was not the only one, but somehow Mom, I don't know, picked the right one. And they were like kind of, I don't know, partners or whatever. Like, I mean, they didn't even kiss. And they were like that for like 2 months or something. So she would hang out with the other peeps. She would hang out with him, go at his place and whatnot. So the thing about this is, thinking back to those moments, you feel like so young, so naive, so stupid. Of course, she didn't say "I love you" because it wasn't true. But it was kind of weird, no? And thinking about the real, true first love that one has had, and that's maybe not love as for love in the adult life, but love for what love might be at that age. You might be a bit older. For somebody, it's going to be around 16, 18. For somebody else, it's going to be around 20. For somebody else, it's going to be maybe at 30. And for someone, they never meet love, or their first love, the love of their life. No, there are many definitions, and there's nothing that fits, for the right, for the sake of right, because it doesn't mean anything to be the first love of somebody, and sometimes you're the first love of somebody, but they are not your first love. So definitions vary. But this is all to say that probably at that point in time, because once you fall in love and you're interested in a person and you have a crush, you of course think that you're never going to get over it, and that's the person that you always have in mind, that you're never going to go past it and whatnot. But the truth of the matter is that if you look deep down, especially at a younger age, for example, Mom was 12 when this thing happens. She knew that this guy wasn't the forever guy. I mean, deep down, And so we just looked at a post on LinkedIn from a guy that we know, and maybe we know he listens to the podcast, who has just created his first company. And we don't mean to wish him not well, but the thing is that probably this company is not going to be his last. It's not going to be his last company, because maybe he's going to be very successful and buy other ones. Or it's not going to be his last company because he's just going to crush it, and then he just needs to do something else. Maybe another company, maybe not. So the fallacy of thinking that first movers, first timers, first experiencers in something is gonna be the thing that happens is wrong. And I know that sometimes in startup land, it's quite easy to just romanticize beginnings. And when you have it tough, but you have no idea how much tougher it gets afterwards, and you say, oh, I'm gonna have cash in the bank or not. Yes, it helps you to solve problems, but it's not the solution of your problems, for example. And it's not even the people around you. It's the growth path that lays in front of you. And so we started thinking about how even mom at her first company, a company that was never a company anyways, because it was a company that has never become a company, was called Whip Happen, was a mechanism for, actually it was not Whip Up the first, but let's say it was the first, a mechanism that helped people find parking spaces through an app. And the thing is, if you start thinking about it, mom has just cried when they got her on stage afterwards, of course, on Eindhoven at a Hardtech Excel event where it wasn't hardware accelerator. Startup never went in this accelerator batch, and they flew them to Eindhoven, but they weren't selected. And frankly, we're not stopping enough time and say what else, what could have changed if she were accepted. But she remembered perfectly crying in her room where other people would be there with her, sleeping on the same hotel bed and hotel room with the co-founders. And it was like a tragedy. And somehow, someday, the sun shone again and life got brought back. Other projects came in, other things went by, and that's all that life is. And so this podcast of today is just a reminder of whatever project you're on to, whatever life endeavor you're on to, that feels as if it's never gonna end. In the good or the bad, it does end. Because everything does in the end and mutates its form. And somehow, sometimes, the mutation of the form is also potentially the end. So it might go very well. You might just want to find yourself selling your company, lots of money. That's going to end. You're going to have another set of things to be dealing with. And you're probably going to have new beginnings. And what if you run out of cash in the bank? Well, it's going to end. At some point, it's going to end. And it's going to end exactly maybe how not you would have expected. But you're going to have sometime, new mind for fresh starts. So we wish a very good future to this company. But if you find yourself in one of your first experiences, it's very hard that comes up as right. And if it does, props to you. But odds are against you. And the thing is, when you know it, you can reframe what you are expecting out of it. Now, if mom got out of business today, she would just find herself in a situation where basically all of the things, especially from a management perspective on how to launch a startup that she didn't know before because she hadn't ever, she would know it. Now, would she do a startup again? Well, we don't know. She doesn't know. It's not a matter of asking the question now because it's not happening. But just tell yourself, what if? And so it might be true that learning is actually the final objective. Because you're never going to end up, even if you feel like it, in the same position at which you started. And that's ultimately the goal. Because at some point you will stack up an amount of skills that if you're persistent enough, if you're good enough, you will get to all the places where extraordinary talent is not required if you don't have it, which we don't know. So remember that your first is not going to be your last. In 99.9% of the cases, even though the world likes to tell everybody this story. Now, for the time being, just remind you of that. And remember at the times where you first started. And just look at it with a smile. And congratulate yourself, because no matter if you're in the same adventure or not, you did it up to now. And for now, sending you lots of midweek kisses, hugs, and bits of barks. Bye bye.